All right. So we're back again.
Yes,
BRS,
sir, ski.
Beyond Reps and Sets.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right, I'm doing well.
Yeah, we got the weights back underneath. I like it.
Yeah, we're trying to just keep it authentic to what we're trying to do, the message we are trying to send.
And
right?
and what is that message today?
Well, today we've got something good on the docket. I would say something that I'm very passionate about myself.
I would agree.
Being in the field of work that I'm in, the professional that I am, the recognition of how important this thing is. We talked about it in episode 1. We talked about the secret sauce, right? If I would say there's another secret sauce, I would say this is
Secret
it.
Sauce 2.0.
Secret sauce 2.0.
If the secret sauce was ketchup, which is resistance training, this thing is like mustard. It's like right up there.
Yeah, exactly. If you
Okay,
want to make
I
the
hear you.
proper hot dog,
Yeah. All right.
you want to dress it right.
Yeah. I like it.
I'd actually put this above the secret sauce just because from an evolutionary standpoint, it's something we cannot do without. Like for survival, this is definitely something that's important.
And I would say lacking of this would have bigger implications on your ability to do the other secret sauce that we talked about. So
Exactly. Yeah. Come forward a little bit because that plant's gonna juke
you
your
see
eye
it,
out.
right? I've been trying to fight with him. I didn't want to mess up the flow, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, we're good. So today's main topic is the impact of sleep. Yes. So we're going to talk about this not from an expert's perspective because we're not researchers in this field, but we utilize information from the research in this field to improve ourselves and to also improve our clients, right? And sending this message out to our listener base, I think, is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
Okay,
it'd be neglect to speak on how it's positively impacted our own lives and then the lives that we've been so lucky to work with.
Precisely. Have you thought about why we sleep as humans?
I think it's one of those things we do to regulate our bodies. I haven't sat down and thought about it, but I think it's like one of those things like hunger. You know what I mean? It's just like those innate things that we desire on a day-to-day that we might not be conscious of. Like if you neglect it for so long, you might just end up like knocking out, and that's because it is a biological process that needs to take place.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's very, very necessary. And you could have varying degrees of quantity and quality of sleep, and you may not even realize how it's impacting you negatively. Yeah. I think you only recognize the positive changes when you start to focus on improving it.
And I think those positive things can be associated to other things going well. You know what I mean? Busy guy.
Sorry, we'll let that one go.
Okay. But so it's hard to pin that down to just, I was also in a space where I was sleeping better. If I'm thinking, wow, I'm able to remember things very clearly now. I'm able to recall, I was trying to remember the number of that taxi and I was able to do it. Oh, okay. I guess I just had a lucky day, rather than looking at the quality of sleep you might have had the week before or 2 days before leading up to that day,
Of course. When we look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, I think a lot of understanding the biological processes of our bodies as humans, we do a couple things. We look at how we've evolved to where we are. And then we also look at other creatures, right? Other animals, there is no creature out there that doesn't sleep.
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
Think about it,
Yeah, that's wild.
right? There are other creatures that don't do resistance training. Right?
Yeah. Like,
There,
that's crazy.
if you think about it that
Yeah.
way, right?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and here, okay, so in preparation for this episode, I did some more research, and
Are there any animals that don't need to sleep?
okay, listen, this is interesting. Dolphins
Okay.
use half of their brain to sleep, and half of the brain is conscious and awake
Holy.
because they need to actually go up to the surface to get air.
Oh.
So it's a
okay.
survival thing, right?
Okay.
Here's another example. There's like there are some birds. I don't know if it's every bird or there's this specific type of bird that has the ability also to do this. So hemisphere, half of their brain is sleeping, half of it isn't.
But that's still interesting that there, some sort of sleep adaptation has still remained, even in mammals or birds that may not need to do the whole. They didn't, because evolution will get rid of anything that isn't advantageous to
Yes.
survival. So it's just interesting that sleep has always remained.
Always remains.
You can get rid of a limb. You can get rid of, certain things with eyesight. There are mammals that live in the ground. There are animals that live in darker environments, insects that don't necessarily need like their ocular vision, so they get rid of that. But sleep is still one of those things.
Yeah, so
Crazy.
these birds, right? They'll all pitch on the branch or whatever, and the ones on the outside, on the ends, have to stay awake because they could fall off. I think that was the reason.
Yeah.
So the ones that pitch in the middle, they get to sleep entirely, like both hemispheres are sleeping. Whereas the ones that end up on the outsides have to somewhat stay awake.
Interesting.
But they can never fully stay awake because it's necessary.
Yeah. It when you think about the levels of what adaptations take place, I think animals are like a great example biologically of what can be done,
Great example.
Like the platypus always gets me, like what is going on there? You know what I mean? But yeah.
Yeah, so
Conversation
anyways,
for another day.
but this is, I think, what intrigues people about studying sleep,
Yeah.
right? And here's an interesting thing too. I think this is just a theory, but there are chronotypes. So the night owls versus the early birds, right? There's potentially genetic reasons as to why you go to bed late. Certain people.
Yeah.
And they've found actually that couples who have different chronotypes can lead to divorce because sleep is impacted. Like when they do surveys,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the way to get around that is to do a sleep divorce,
What is that?
where when you're sleeping, you're not together. You're sleeping in separate rooms.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so like
So
not
that
in the
you
same
don't-
bed.
So it doesn't lead to
Okay.
well, not different environments. Because let's say your wife,
room
let's say your wife likes to
temperature.
go to sleep early, and you
yeah.
want to stay up till 1 a.m. Right? You're gonna interrupt her sleep. Then she wakes up early, and you want to sleep,
Yeah.
right? So the sleep is gonna be interrupted.
But then my thing would be another thing that we know that makes relationships go well is like, so you guys planning appointments to Boeing, like that would be the other thing. I would be like, it's like I'm knocking on the door to make like, hey, we're gonna start 10 p.m. You got a hard out at 11, so
Yeah, obviously there's more planning that has to happen, and you'd have to do it probably in the day when you're both awake.
Yeah.
And
Quick little lunch break.
but here's the thing: you would think that those couples that have this so-called sleep divorce would have a poor sex life together, but it actually improves because their sleep improves, and something that we'll get to is libido improves. Sex hormones are more balanced.
I will say more important than the schedule is the desire. So if you're doing something to increase the desire,
Yeah.
then you're probably gonna find a way to get it done.
Of
human
course.
human nature will take over from there.
Exactly.
You know?
You'll find the time.
You'll
to
find
do
the
it,
time.
right?
Make time for the things you want.
We should touch on this though, because I think it seems like society is really moving in the direction of, well, we know insomnia rates are increasing
Yeah.
drastically. And then there's some thought or when you look at caffeine and coffee intake, it has been increasing when you superimpose one graph on the next, increase in coffee intake follows the same trajectory as insomnia rates. But I think we should also touch on hustle culture.
I was just about to say, I think it's also a nature of people need to do more to meet their living expenses, so whereas you might have been able to live off of maybe one job and have a decent living, with the price raises of just the standard living expenses, like I'm not even talking about luxury. I haven't even mentioned vacation, family, you know what I mean, having kids. I'm just talking about you, maybe a spouse or a partner trying to get a house or something like that. Because of the increase of standard of living, you're seeing people have to do more things to accumulate wealth. So I think entrepreneurship used to be something that was a little bit less likely. Like if you were an entrepreneur 30 years ago, you were, wow, that's crazy, and now there's a lot more precedent for people to take matters into their own hands, along with another job that's maybe more concrete, founded in maybe something you went to school for, or just something to pay those living expenses, and then the whatever other endeavor, maybe it is another job you're doing just to meet ends meet, which I think we know how that raises cortisol levels, and then that can have its own implications on sleep, but then also just physically, there's only so much time that you can allot. Like we in our discussion before we started rolling, you mentioned there's only so far you can spread yourself thin, right? So there comes a point where there's no more thinning that can take place. You're only
Just
one person.
disappear.
Yeah, just invisible.
And also, some jobs or careers are shift work.
Truck drivers and
Police officers, firefighters, although they have like opportunity to sleep, but it's just the change in times when you actually sleep. That is also a problem.
You know what's crazy too? I have a friend he's in his last bit of training before he's like a officer on the road, his own car and everything. He just got a place with his wife of 3 years now, and like hearing the training period of like I'll be like, hey, you want to hang out? And you'd be like, yo, I don't know what time I'm gonna get, because it's shift oriented and it changes week to week. But he knows it from like blocks of time, so like 3-month period or something like that. So he'll have that. But in that transitional period, there is that shift that you see, So yeah, shift work is a different grind, and then you still gotta be there, present for your girl or your wife or your family. So
yeah, man. And you remember that there was this video, I think it was 50 Cent, and he's like
50.
He's like, I sleep when I die.
I hear where he's coming from with that, and we'll kind of break down. But
it's like when you're sleeping, I'm getting ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much every rapper from the 90s to early 2000s. So probably even, I don't know too much new rappers.
I think it's the hustle culture period, right?
Yeah.
And we need to dispel the myth, because you're going to hustle yourself to the ground.
Yeah. There's only so long you can do that before it catches up to you. And the things that will dull those senses, we've talked about in previous episodes. So like caffeine is a great one. And then Adderall, all these sort of other things that you can use will eventually have effects on you neurologically, and then also you might ruin your sleep indefinitely, or at least for a long time.
We'll talk about caffeine a little bit later.
Yeah.
Once we get into the meat and potatoes of it all, because caffeine does play a role in poor sleep.
For sure.
Right? You just have to understand how to manage it, and the dosage. The dose makes the poison, basically, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have any client experiences that you can share around sleep?
Almost, if I have 10 clients, 9 of them are having issues sleeping.
Wow. So that's just like a snapshot of society.
Snapshot. Yeah. Especially now, because like I have clients that are in school. So like, let's say the younger ones, not going to say no names, but they will have school, and then I train with them online. So I give them programs, and then even just like checking in with them, the person I'm thinking about, school, works is a bank teller, and then still goes to the gym and is looking for their fitness goals. So you're trying to school from Monday through Friday, from like 10 to 3, and then break in between, and then work again from 5 to 10. You know what I mean? So it gets real whittled down into what you can actually do. And then I have people that work at home and then in office on certain days. So driving down, commuting to downtown, or your regular 9 to 5. 9 to 5 seem to be a little bit more psychological. If they're looking to train with me, it's probably because they have issues with accountability, or they know that they need that extra help. And that's usually poor eating habits, we know, can be symptoms of other things that might be going on. So
touch on that too later.
Yeah. So sleep is usually one of those things that you'll see that might also be lacking. And I think, even speaking personally, I can say anytime where my training isn't good or my motivation isn't in the place where it needs to be, I can usually look to my sleep as one of those things, those that we talk about, those pillars that will probably fall down.
Definitely. Well said, for sure.
How about you?
Yeah, my experience is it's interesting.
Because you're the sleep master. Let me tell you, I knew about sleep, and then like to the level that you would break it down, I was like, yeah, I could only imagine you scolding your clients with sleep.
It's hard though, because there are so many reasons why sleep is impacted. And like you mentioned, right, it could be work related, it could be stress related. There's just so many. It could be stimulant related, like we talked about, caffeine, alcohol usage, so many things. But when people come to see me, like in the clinic, and they have these nagging injuries that just randomly crop up, or they're constantly getting injured, like they're athletes that are, prone to injury. You ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Right?
You're more susceptible to get an injury once it's already been injured. Type.
Yes. Interesting fact is, we always tell people, oh, you need to stretch. You need to work on your core strength or your pelvic stability, hip stability.
I have a question for you about core strength, but I'll save it for another day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when we always try to work on those things, but in the literature, the only thing that actually increases risk of injury is lack of sleep.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's proven. And I think I've said this before on a previous episode. But that just goes to show you that, are we looking in the wrong place? Okay, so someone comes to see me, they have a preconceived notion of why they're having pain. And when I start to dig deeper and ask them about their sleep, that's when it really comes to a head. And it's very hard to prove to people that the sleep is your problem, because they're often saying, I've always slept like this. But there's cumulative impact.
I heard two things, and we share a lot of podcasts between the two of us, right? And I thought it was so well put in the DOAC, Diary of a CEO podcast. I forget the gentleman the name of the gentleman that was on, but he was a like thought specialist. Like that was where most of his research was, like how much our thoughts impact our physiological senses. So, like in terms of pain, in terms of how we feel, our mood. And the main one that you hear a lot is like thoughts become things, right? But
like you're thinking it into reality.
Yes. Yeah. So like, but the other term that he said that really, really stuck to me is like, you could also be addicted to the guilt that's associated with it. So it's like, if you have the tendency to maybe have like sugar before bedtime, and then the minute you have that sugar, then you feel guilty. It's like, oh, but I was doing so good the week before. It's like, you might be addicted to the feeling of that guilt, actually. And it kind of like flipped it on its head and got me thinking about people getting so used to a certain thing and then finding comfort in that, So
of course, yeah, it's routine, habit, and routine.
That my brain just went to that when you said, but I've always been doing this. Well, if you've always been setting people's houses on fire, that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's a very obviously hyperbolized example of something that we know in society isn't actually beneficial. But it's the same thing of, just because you've been doing it more often or you're used to doing it does not mean that that's the thing that you don't need to maybe alter or look deeper into to maybe change the results. In order to get a different result, you need to do a different thing.
There's a lot of technology out there that can give you feedback, biofeedback on how well you're sleeping. So there's the Whoop band, there's the Oura ring. I personally use the Oura ring. I think the Apple Watch does it too, right? There's
most of the Fitbit stuff, like that. But I think as you go down, degree of
accuracy,
it goes down,
right? I have some clients who have had years of pain, and their last resort was coming to me. And when I take their history and I ask questions that apparently other therapists didn't ask, I start to uncover that their lifestyle is actually creating this level of perceived threat in their brain, which then your brain has to manifest communicate to your consciousness to tell you that there's something wrong. So it's
something we need to protect.
Right. There's a request for change. And often it comes hand in hand with sleep. Right. So I have these clients that have all this pain, and what are the 3 things that I tell them they need to work on, right?
Can I guess?
Yeah, I guess. Go ahead.
Well, sleep, obviously, is our main thing for the episode. So sleep, and then I would say protein consumption, and then resistance training.
Yeah, so eat, sleep, train. Simple.
Yeah.
And you could break those down into specifics, right?
Of course. Because I know personally, whenever I say stuff in like simplified forms like that, it makes people almost like get mad, because it's like, it obviously can't be that.
Yes.
And I think the frustration stems from people trying these things and being like, well, if it was that easy, then I should have already obtained it. And maybe they say change is a noble act because it's hard to do. You know what I mean? So anybody undergoing change, anybody that's done any sort of change out there, I'm speaking to you, like, kudos to you, because you had to literally go look at yourself in the mirror, acknowledge that something was wrong, which a lot of people can do, But then you had to show up even when it wasn't necessarily you could see the light at the end of the tunnel and keep doing that. And anybody that can begin to build those sort of calluses through trials, through tribulations, always understands that once you get through the mental minefield that you're creating, or maybe it's real, maybe you're dealing with some real trauma, but once you get through that minefield with maybe the tools that we've been able to give, or just like some of the tips we give today on sleep and give you some more knowledge, you understand that, oh my God, I just need to keep doing this. Keep doing and trusting.
You said something there that is key though, trauma. Because that's one thing that if someone has gone through trauma that is not healed, sleep won't even correct that. Like you actually need to seek professional help and figure out what is going to help to heal your whatever trauma that you've experienced in the past. Because once you've healed that trauma, then everything else just falls into place. So if you look at a hierarchy of needs when it comes to well-being, a lot of the stuff we talk about are very important, but you have to have the foundations in place. Right. So sleep is definitely there, but emotional, psychological well-being as it pertains to traumatic memories. I'm not a psychologist, so I can't really talk too deep on this, but that's one thing that I can recognize as well as a clinician, like when I have to refer out to someone else.
Yeah.
Right?
Because the trauma response is to a certain degree. So like that's something I would maybe look to if you're doing the processes of it, working through, and there still isn't any sort of big overarching change. Maybe the more I learn about this, the more I learn about how we talk about the systems working together and these coming together. So usually if we're not feeling well mentally, changing our environment, moving can then positively impact our mood and our
Definitely.
Our mental. If that in and itself isn't changing by doing those things, it probably means that whatever is eliciting that response is at a level that may require more attention to address before we can just say movement. But the movement piece is something that once that thing is dealt with, or throughout the process of dealing with that, can still move you along.
That's the catalyst.
Yes.
Right? We should talk about rule of twos. Okay, it's an old study that was done in the 60s. I think it was Simon and Reha or something. I can't remember exactly. It was a psychological study. And they discovered that regardless of if it's a positive event or not, okay, obviously negative changes are going to have a negative impact on your stress response. But even a positive change, your body as a human, your body and brain can only handle 2 positive changes at a time.
Wait, say that one more time.
So let's say you get married, positive, right? For most people, if that's something that you wanted.
I would hope so.
And then you buy a house.
Yeah.
Those 2 things are so stressful because your body and brain has to adapt to those changes. Especially if, let's say, you haven't lived premaritally with the person. So
on
then,
your own.
Right. So you're moving into a new house that you bought. Now you have to manage this house. And then you have to live with somebody else.
For the first time. Yeah.
Then you add something else onto it that's positive. Let's say she gets pregnant within a month.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's 3 things. Usually that third thing is tipping the scale. So when we talk about making changes, positive changes, we talk about this before, like where's the low-hanging fruit?
The big rocks.
Right. Stacking habits. Okay, so sleep is off. Sleep is not good. It hasn't been good. Okay. Diet has not been good either. And the person doesn't exercise. There are 3 things that need to change. And within those 3 things, there's multiple behavioral modifications that need to be made. So how do you choose which two to do first? It's not as simple as, okay, eat better and work out.
Yeah.
Because within those two things,
You haven't built the foundation.
and there's multiple, okay, so eating better, okay, you got to increase your protein. You've got to make sure you hit your fiber, make sure you hydrate yourself.
There's a lot of big things that need to change, even in one of those
In
positive
one of
outcomes.
those categories,
Okay.
right?
So it would suffice to say, trying to knock out all four. It's like trying to, like in a year, there's a reason why there's a syllabus. Like, okay, we're gonna do chapter 3, 4, and 5. Because if I were to give you 12 chapters to try and condense down,
It'd be too much.
it'd be too much, and you'd probably only retain maybe like 10% of that.
Exactly.
Crazy.
So like if you're doing 4, this brings me back to my master's when I was doing physio at
Yeah.
Queens.
Were you
Our
like a
first-
study like weeks in before prior, or like procrastinate? Like I'm just going ham for like a 12 hours straight, slamming some Red Bulls.
For things that I'm not interested in, procrastination.
Yeah.
But when I have like a goal in mind, I'm constantly on it. I'm always thinking about it.
Yeah.
So
I
if
can
there's
attest to
something,
that.
if there's something that's that I'm really interested and motivated to do, I'll focus on that. And that I think is that whole ADHD thing, right? So when I got to Queens, I was super motivated, and we were doing the musculoskeletal, so basically the orthopedic segment of the program, and I had 9 exams in 1 week.
Holy sh!
Yeah,
All like term-based stuff.
yeah.
Or
It was
like
all,
essay.
no, it was all exams. Those were exams. Like we had to sit down and write like 2-hour-long exams,
Yikes.
and we had 9 of them in the matter of like 4 or 5 days.
Oh, jeez. So that's like multiple in one day.
On each day, yeah. So what do you have to do? You have to prepare for that in advance, right?
Right.
But think about the level of stress that you're under in that situation.
Now put like a job. Maybe you're part-time. Were you training?
No, I
Good
could
Life?
not. I could not train.
Okay, I was about to say.
I could not I could not work outside of that because I wanted to
That's
keep
a full-time job, right?
Even
there.
my training suffered. I got to the school prior to like orientation week, like 185 pounds, lean, like ready to meet people.
Ready. Yeah,
right?
yeah. I know what you mean.
I just remember because okay,
This guy said 185, lean and ready. You know.
So my colleagues can attest to this. There was a video online to entice people to apply to the program, right? And it was a video of one of the classes doing their labs, and all the men were topless, right? And then the women were wearing just like sports bras or whatever. And I'm sitting there like maybe a year prior to, like I was anticipating everything and working towards this goal of getting in because it's very difficult to get in.
So this is like 19, 18, or this is like
No,
masters.
This was my master's, so I was 20. I was about 23.
So footy, you're just training in the gym. Like there's no like, are you doing pickup on Sunday at this point too?
I'm not playing at this point. I'm not really playing.
Okay, so just gym stuff.
No. So I'm there and I'm thinking like, okay, I'm holding a little bit extra fluff and my being self-conscious about that, obviously, thinking like I'm going to have to be shirtless in front of all these people. Okay. Now I'm being vulnerable, right? But so what did I do? Right. I decided to train 6 days a week, push, pull legs, pull legs, 1 day off. And I was running probably maybe 10 to 15 kilometers
Jesus Christ.
a week, potentially maybe even 20.
Are you breaking that like 2 kilometers a day, or you're just like 2 days?
No, I was doing like 5 to 7 kilometers a day, 3 days a week. So it was actually more like,
that's like
it was more like 15 to 20 kilometers, 21 kilometers per week. It was to me, like in hindsight, in retrospect, it was too much. I could have gotten the same results doing a lot less.
Yeah, but we talk about that before, and like, you have to almost. I mean, you don't have to go through it. That's why we tell you these things, so you
Yeah.
don't hopefully have to go. But it is that thing of, oh well, I want to get there quicker, so I got to do more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is not the truth, fellas, folks,
Yes,
men and women, boys and girls.
Anybody who wants to get in shape.
So the reason I said this is because, okay, I got to school and I have to study, and I know I'm going to have all of this work cut out for me, and I got to do these 9 exams, right? So what did I do? I cut the gym off completely, which was also, in retrospect, not smart. But how do you handle all of the stress, excuse me, of, the learning and being away from home, having to mingle and meet new people. Also, like the environment there is different. Let's just put it that way. It's different, right?
Yeah, the mindset.
I know you can attest to this, because where did you go for kin?
So I was down in York, and there was that same sort
Was
of
it York?
thing.
I thought it was like up north.
I got accepted into Tampa, the Lakehead University. That's
Where I thought it was.
And I remember telling my mom, and her being like,
Be careful now.
yeah. she was like, hey man, with where you come from, you are gonna stick out a lot more over there, and that I don't know if you're ready for that sort of attention. And
That would have been a neat experiment, though.
yeah, and I had other friends who like went there for rowing, also Jamaican. You know what I mean? So, like, I remember thinking about it, and I'd be like, damn. But looking back on it, I think being away would have taught me a lot. You know what I mean? So, I ended up going to New York because we could take the bus, and it just worked out a little bit better. And
But you've experienced that too, right? New environment. It's just different, right? So let's get back to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
The stress just compounds, right? So when we're trying to make positive changes, it's no different than having, waiting for that third shoe to drop.
Yeah.
Right? You have to think about it that way. What can I manage to change? Start with that small change, build momentum, let it snowball. And from my experience, I think I am the healthiest I've been in a long time. But it's been a 5-year process of like
Figuring out how to
having an autoimmune issue, right? Aphthous ulcers that I would get like since my early 20s. Obviously, when that stress mounted, and me not having a good understanding of what being healthy is, then also
and that's
a lot
because of the marketing and how it's
right, and a lot of research that has emerged, but also me being raised in a household that was not educated in those things, right?
and most people get their ideas from media on these things, right? So when you're in those positions, you just think, oh, I'm gonna do what my favorite athlete does, I'm gonna do what my favorite bodybuilder does, without realizing that's that person's job, and their whole life has been geared like where they make their money, where they make their bread, and where they also their lifestyle is garnered in and around that. So for someone like
But
that,
are they healthy is the question.
and we can even debate to the degree of how healthy it is to live that sort of lifestyle, and we see as technology advances, as we learn more, we get better with these sort of things. So one thing I want to say before we get into the blind ranking, what would be something you would do different, or you could say to someone who is in that position, maybe going into the Masters, that you would do differently to maybe manage things a little bit better?
Get a hold of what the optimal health of your personal body can be, and try to create an environment where you and a schedule where you can, like I said, stack those positive behaviors so that when you get to a situation where you're
A little bit more volatile, like a lot of things.
a lot of things that you have to do and your productivity has to increase, and that you have wiggle room, you have leeway, okay? And think about what things that you can, like, what are the priorities? And I think prioritizing your health, making sure that you're going to have to alter your training, but
That's
understand how to change your training.
That's huge. So maybe going from 6 days, running 3 times a week, maybe you're reducing that to 3 days, maybe run once.
Exactly.
Something like that.
And really listen to your body and assess and reflect on your cognitive performance, your emotional well-being, as well as how your body feels. And if you can figure that out, that's, first of all, the knowledge. You have to have knowledge around this stuff, because knowledge will empower you to make the right decisions and know when to pull back, when you can, when you can coast or when you can blast, right? Schedule your workouts based around your school routine. Okay.
I think I agree with that, focusing on the habits that would lead you to better behavioral changes. So, getting used to, I'm sure you had habits that were good, but that needed to improve when you went from the degree to going into the master's. For me, some things that I would say would be that exact same thing, and then also seeking a mentor or someone that you can bring those sort
100%.
of things to. A lot of the things that I already knew was because of having you as a physio from I was like 14 years old. You know what I mean? So when I would go into a position where I might get injured or something, or feeling something, rather than be like, oh, I'll just work through this, I, at like 19, was able to distinguish, like, oh, I shouldn't do that. Now, my brain still wasn't fully developed, so I'd probably still, like, maybe come back maybe a little bit too quick. So rather than take maybe a week off, I'd take, like, 1 day, 2. But even just, like, maybe if I had more communication with you, then I could have got that more. But I didn't see the value in having someone a little bit older than me, had been there, done that, as a real tool. So if you can, and you are in that stage in post-secondary, and you're in anywhere from 19 to 25, like, I would say seeking a mentor or someone that you can ask those hard questions to when life gets challenging could be definitely, like, pay a lot of dividends.
Seek a mentor, learn how your body works, understand how to manage your stress. You have to have tools in your toolbox to manage that, like breathing, mindfulness, and then just fueling your body properly.
Yeah.
If you can do all that, then you're going to be that much better at studying and showing up, and your productivity levels will go up. And know that you can't just continue to try to produce through the wee hours of the morning. Pulling all-nighters is not a good idea.
Yeah.
So plan and prioritize so that you don't have to cram. Right. That's my advice.
Yeah. It's great.
All right.
And if that sounds like a lot, it is. It's going to take you a lifetime to do it, but at least those are the areas that we want to focus in on. All right, so I understand that you have a blind ranking for me today.
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right.
So the blind ranking topic, rank these 5 behavioral modifications that will enhance your physical performance and improve your overall health and well-being.
Okay.
All right?
All right. Okay.
Okay, number 1. training.
Okay. Oof. Okay, so I'll probably put that. I mean, that's a secret sauce right there. So that's got to be. But I'm assuming you're gonna have something else on the list, so I'm gonna say number 2.
Okay.
Say number 2.
Mobility work, flexibility,
Okay.
stretching.
Dynamic, increasing range of
Movement.
motion. Okay.
Right.
I think training can encompass that. So I'll put that just below training, because if you are tight, then you can kind of reduce your quality of life. And if you are training frequently, you're much more likely to increase range of motion if you're training properly. So I'll put number 3.
Taking high quality supplements.
You can get most of the things that you need from eating foods, bar supreme deficiency in certain micronutrients, or immune deficiencies. So I would say, I still think you're gonna have something else. So it's very important if you are deficient in certain nutrients. So I'll put that. I won't put it last because I do think there are things that do more. So I'll put number 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mindfulness, practicing mindfulness.
Oof. It's like what do you call those things? Affirmations and stuff like that.
It could be.
Could be a form
but
of that.
But it could just be living in the present, taking a moment to feel your body, scan your body. There's different ways of doing it.
I think this might be controversial. Cause I think that might be higher up for some people, but that's gonna be. I'm still holding out that there's. I might be very wrong, but I'm gonna put that number 5. So what do I got? Number 1.
So you got number 1.
Yeah.
Sleep.
Yes. I was like, yeah, this is the episode. So yeah. Okay. I feel very confident with that now. Yeah. I feel
so
very
you got
good.
sleep at number 1.
Training
at number 2. Mobility at number 3.
Yeah.
Supplements at number 4.
Yeah. I'm very happy. Wow.
Mindfulness at number 5. You like that?
I like that. I'm curious to hear what you say. Is there anything you would shift around there?
Okay, so I put sleep at number 1. Sleep
Okay.
has to be optimal.
So far, so good.
I would put training number 2.
Okay.
Okay, because training can sometimes be mindful, right? It can be a way of
get you-
practicing
yeah.
mindfulness.
Same
I
with
would-
mobility too. I would think like those yoga, they're very meditative in nature, or can be.
I would actually put mindfulness at number 3.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I that's the one I felt like I could have had some wiggle room with. Why above mobility?
I put mindfulness above mobility because training, if you're training properly, you may not need to do mobility work. Obviously, this is very individual.
Yeah.
Okay, so this list will change for everybody.
Yeah. But we're speaking on your thoughts
Okay.
here. So yeah.
That's the reason why mobility work has to be very specific to what you need. And sometimes you don't need to do it at all.
Yeah.
Like I'll be completely transparent. I don't do any mobility work outside of my training.
But that's because you're training. It's difference between training and working out. The mindset that comes with those. So when
Right.
you are training, you have an advanced knowledge of how the body should work and operate. So when you are doing these lifts or these movements in the gym, you're mindful of ways that can attack different areas. So like quickly an example, if you want to work on your core rather than doing some ab routine that you have on YouTube, you can do a lunge with an offset kettlebell so that your core is more active throughout that entire range. As a way where you can work your core while doing an exercise, But the only way you would know that is by having an advanced knowledge of training and exercise.
Or you have a coach.
Or you have a coach.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't have areas I need to work on, right? Like my left ankle could be mobilized every day. It's just not very necessary at this point.
On the
right?
rung of importance,
Yes. And I would put supplements at the end. Although it also depends. If you're not eating well, and supplementing could be the catalyst to really propel you forward.
I just even from being around my girl and like seeing like how much things she's overcome, I see the important, like I'm very lucky in the sense that I have a lot of these things patented, and there's a lot of issues with how her body absorbs nutrients, and supplements have been a good way of getting her back into place. Now, do I think that she'll need that for the rest of her life? No. Like, it's just a matter of getting her to a place where, you know, she can operate more efficiently, and then finding ways to get that in through your food. But even like I'm not a dietitian or anything, but there are certain things that are much more challenging to get the required amount, especially if you're already in a deficit, through eating. And we haven't talked at all about the habits that need to be developed there, or the time it might be to actually prepare these meals, the price of these sort of foods, and how that might factor in socially, economically. So that's why I've loosened my kind of overall when I look at supplements. Still, when it comes to pre-workout and stuff like that, I'm like, but ones where it's garnered towards nutrients that you might be lacking, for sure.
Are you using any supplements at this point?
Multivitamin, vitamin C, vitamin D3 in drop form, and omega 3 and 6.
You use creatine?
No, I do not. I tried it, and then I felt like this might be TMI, but my something was going on with my pee, and I was like, yeah, I don't know about this. So
what about how much were you taking? Like, were you
5 grams? 5 grams, I believe.
Yeah, so I use creatine every day. I take a green drink. I actually use Athletic Greens. I put a drop or two of vitamin D plus K, vitamin D3 plus K. I sometimes supplement with protein, like protein shake.
Protein shake. Okay, right? Yeah. I guess that's that's such a part of my identity. I didn't even see that as a supplement.
that means we need to get you some better. You need to work on that whole food protein intake then.
No, like literally, but I'm having 180. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
no, you can do it. You can do it without.
If I'm in a crazy, like I did it for the last month because I didn't re-up on my protein, but the ease at which is done is, I think, more why I have it.
Yeah.
You know, because you drink it on the go. You know what I mean? In between, especially now coming between this clinic and the gym, you know, it's one of those value in time supplements. But it's funny, it's just so baked into. I was like, damn, yeah.
It's crazy though, because this list, I mean, it doesn't include some other heavy hitters, but this list will change really with every individual.
Yeah.
Right? Like, some people will need to put mindfulness at number 1.
I was debating going up top.
Because we're talking about physical performance, but we're also talking about complete health and well-being.
That's why I was like, the benefit of putting yourself in a better mindset will trickle down into all those other things.
Yeah.
So, and
also improving your sleep.
Yeah.
Definitely improves your mood, decreases anxiety. Well, let's get into that right now, actually.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break. Just a reminder to follow us on all platforms at Beyond Reps and Sets. We are now live on YouTube. If you don't know, if you're listening to this on audio, we also have Instagram and TikTok page of the same name. All the links will be down in the description below. So be sure to follow us there and comment. Let us know how you like the pod. If there are any sort of questions that you have, we are active in those comment sections. So be sure to keep us updated. We'll be right back.
Okay. So
All right.
The main topic today is the impact of sleep on your overall health and well-being, but also your fitness goals.
Yes.
Okay, like we got to keep it consistent. Right? We are a fitness and health podcast.
Yes.
Right. I think we should definitely talk about circadian rhythms.
Yeah, that's like topic that really sticks out to me.
That's I think the overarching theme, right? Basically, circadian rhythms, it's built on a 24-hour clock, basically, right? Mm-hmm. It's how our body's physiology gets into a routine, right? When the sun goes up and then the sun comes down. And that actually helps to balance our hormones and make sure that our body's working properly. So that's, I think, a very basic way of describing that. And when your circadian rhythms are off, there are negative things that can come of it.
100%.
Yeah. Do you have experience feeling that change?
Based off of, I don't think I've ever been as critical to say something like, oh my God, I'm feeling so off because my circadian rhythm is not in flow. But I think on a more general term, I've been able to extrapolate. Like I'm sure many people at home have been like, I worked a double shift these past 2 weeks. I don't have it in me this week to go out on the weekend. So like, let's say they had a unexpected life event. Let's say someone was in the hospital, or, someone got pregnant, or, family just came in town, and then you had to work in and around that, plus with work, and then now you find the weekend you don't have as much energy as you might otherwise used to. I think that's where people see how it manifests.
Yeah, it's really the regulation of sleep and wake cycles. Mm. So when your sleep and wake cycles are off and they're changing consistently, even something as simple as a 3-hour difference in bedtime, can play a role in shifting your circadian rhythms.
I will say anecdotally, like our mom, like, she is in bed 9-10 p.m. every single night, Monday through Friday. So like, if you have done something to affect her sleep, she is on you. You know what I mean? Because she knows even an hour. Like if she's in bed at 11, you just messed up because she got to do the Sudoku puzzle. She got to listen to the gospel channel, that helps her. You can't mess with her rhythm and flow pre-bedtime. And I used to make fun of it, but as of this year, I am seeing like she has the energy in the morning. She's been doing her job consistently for over a decade, almost 2. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe there is something here to be extrapolated, that having a routine every night when you're going to bed, not letting anything disrupt that, to the point where like if it's going to make you uncomfortable, it's going to make you upset. Like There have been times where I'm like, Mom, why can't you do this thing for me? She's like, no, it's gonna affect my sleep. You know, and being like, damn, wow, that's selfish or whatever. But in reality, now that I look at it, it's like she was probably doing that so she could show up and do all the other things that she needed to do for me and her job. You know,
100%. She has the responsibility of a whole school.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you don't get your sleep, then okay. So one thing you mentioned Monday to Friday. What about Saturday and Sunday?
So Saturday to Sunday, she's still in that routine, but there's a little bit more wiggle room.
Okay.
But like it's pretty much because she doesn't go out. You know what I mean? And even if she is, she's the one to leave early type thing. You know, so she'll be out by like even on a Saturday, like 9 p.m. and she's not back in the yard. It's like wow, we're having a wild night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
You ever hear about the term social jet lag?
No, have not heard of that one.
Okay, so you know what jet lag is, right? Like,
yeah, that's when you come back from a trip and it's a different time zone change, so you still feel tired even though technically it's day or night or whatever. You should be sleepy or whatever.
So the person that sleeps well, same time, same bedtime, same wake time, Monday to Friday, but then goes to the bar or the club Saturday night, Friday night, up till 3 a.m.
Yeah, that's
sleeping in.
Yeah.
Come Monday, everything's thrown off.
Yeah,
it's jet lag, basically, but this is called social jet lag. Right. I heard this term a few weeks ago, and I really like it because, you know, you hear about these people who they're trying to make these gains in the gym. But they can't get there.
Yeah.
And, okay, for one, they're probably drinking on the weekend.
Yeah.
But they're also not going to bed at the same time as they normally do.
Yeah.
So it's throwing their circadian rhythms off.
Yeah.
Every weekend.
And for the people that, because I know of people that maybe don't have as rigid a schedule and still do those things, those are genetic anomalies. Those are not the people we should be looking to say, okay, if they can do it, then I can do it. The rule of thumb is if you've been doing something for 8 to 12 weeks and haven't changed, you need to look at what you're doing because you probably can't get up. Certain people can get away with things, you know, because maybe they're on different types of gear or they have a genetic predisposition to just grow muscle faster. That's clinically proven in different cases. So if you have noticed, use the litmus test of yourself. If you are looking in the mirror and you're not seeing the changes that you want to see, you might not be able to get away with those certain things. So that might mean that you have to sacrifice that if you are serious about meeting those gains. And another thing, you might only have to sacrifice it for a little bit of time. You gain the muscle, and then guess what? It's a lot harder to lose after that. So it's something to think about.
For sure. So how do we correct circadian rhythms that are off?
I think, are we gonna get into the REM stuff?
Well, let's talk about this first, and then we'll get into the sleep cycles because the sleep cycles
I'm
are
getting
also.
ahead of myself. I'm getting excited.
Yeah, sleep cycles are also important to understand. I think it's kind of cool to know, you know, what happens when you sleep because a lot of people don't even understand what their body's going through in the night. I think at one point we just thought, your brain and your body's at complete rest.
The minute you hit the pillow,
Yeah.
and it's so interesting to me to break that down.
Because there's a lot that's actually happening, and some would say even more so than when you're awake, or very similar to when you're awake. But these processes have to happen at night when you're sleeping. Not at night, but when you're
whenever
sleeping.
Yeah.
So
the circadian.
So let's say your circadian rhythm's off, or you get to bed late, or you want to get to bed by 10:30, let's say, but you lie in bed, you can't sleep, you end up falling asleep by 1, then you're waking up at let's say 6. So that's 5 hours of sleep, which the average person is supposed to be getting anywhere between 7 to 8, right? So what do you do at that point when you would like to sleep in, and sometimes you actually sleep in past your alarm because the time in which your body wants to sleep has shifted too far? How do we correct that and bring it back? You have responsibilities in the morning. You got to get up. You got to get ready for work. You got to get going. So how do we correct that, right? There's something called sleep compression.
Okay.
Okay? So what I believe is you actually go to bed when you typically fall asleep versus just laying in bed awake. Okay, so let's say 1 a.m. is when you typically end up falling asleep. So get ready for sleeping at 1 a.m. Then usually you want to sleep until 7, 8, but wake up at 6. Okay, so that's only 5 hours of sleep. Right? Usually you naturally try to get your 7 hours by sleeping past your alarm, and then you rush to get ready for work, right? So instead, compress the sleep window so you actually get sleep, but then gradually change your bedtime slowly. Because what's going to happen is you wake up at 6 and you just go about your day. Eventually, you're going to feel awake. You may not feel great, but you'll feel awake and you'll be able to survive the day. Then what happens is your sleep drive increases throughout the day, and come evening, you should be feeling more tired than you were sooner.
Yes.
Right? So then what happens is now at 12, you start to feel tired. So maybe try for 12:30. Right?
And then you dwindle
and then you
down
gradually bring it back
day to day, week to week.
But then you're consistently waking up at 6. So until you get to the point where now you're sleeping by 11 or 10:30 and waking up at 6, then you've shifted your curve.
Love that. I think that's much better than the cycle that people find themselves in, where they are like trying to beat that snooze alarm and hitting that snooze button, because the best way to get into a state of sleep is not to force it. Because I have a lot of, anytime where I've brought it forth to a client, like, oh, you need to get sleep, it's just like, okay, I'm going to be in bed at 10 if that's possible, right? And then because their body is so used to being up, they're in bed restless. And now you have a different response of frustration that might even push you past the 1 a.m. mark, because you're trying at something, failing, and then succeeding to that failure. So now you're like, well, F it, I'm just going to, watch a series of whatever, or, I'm going to get back on my phone, which is going to, we know, sleep hygiene-wise, is going to inhibit your chances of sleeping even worse, and then you get into that cycle. So that's definitely something I'm going to implement. I even have someone in mind for this week.
Try that.
Yeah.
It's a strategy that seems to be effective.
Yeah. I think I have a person in mind that I think would really benefit from that.
You know those people that are like, I don't sleep that well during the week, but I catch up on the weekend.
Yeah. Trying to recover that sleep debt.
Yes.
Yeah.
So sleep debt is another concept that we should discuss, because people often think like, okay, if I lost 4 hours of sleep during the week, I can just do 4 hours extra on the weekend and I'm good.
Like they're picking up a shift.
Yeah. It doesn't actually happen.
It's like, all right, I'll just do double overtime tomorrow and then I'll be Gucci. Yeah.
And then you have to do like 3 times what you've lost to physiologically catch up.
Which we know, if you're doing things, working, having a family, just doing your day-to-day, probably not likely.
Yeah. Sometimes you could, like, let's say you don't sleep well that night, you could potentially have a very short nap before a certain time, like before noon.
Yeah.
Right. Not many people have the opportunity to do that, right?
Yeah, I was about to say that's middle of the day, but that the reading up on that was really interesting. And the time frame they say to do that is you're not exceeding like a 20-minute period. So when we talk about like the cycles of sleep, we can kind of talk about why that is so beneficial.
Right, exactly.
If you're kind of catch up on sleep, or at least make it through the day so you can get better sleep that night.
Yeah. So let's go through then the sleep cycles. We might as well touch on that now then.
You know, I'm excited for it. Yeah.
So there's 4 sleep cycles basically, right? The sleep cycles are divided between REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement. That's what it stands for, REM, and non-REM. And there are basically 4. The third non-REM cycle is actually kind of broken down into 3 and 4. So into 2 cycles. So you have non-REM1, which is very active sleep, like it's fairly light, right? Non-REM2 is also a light, and it's only about 20 minutes. Okay, so the first one is a few minutes. Non-REM2 is up to 20 minutes. So when we look at that, if you want to take a nap, the goal is to avoid non-REM3 and 4, which is deep sleep. Because if you wake up in deep sleep,
it's harder to get back into whatever you might need to do.
Yeah, and it's just not. Have you ever woken up from deep sleep?
It's groggy.
Yeah, it's the worst.
It's one of the worst things. You feel worse than when you went to sleep.
Exactly.
Because you've just entered a state of your body trying to maybe address the things that it wasn't able to while you were conscious, which is why it's so important to be in that level of sleep. And then usually if you're getting woken up out of that situation, you're going to have to move into some form of activity or something. Like you have to be aware, so because most times when people are doing naps, it's because the body is telling you need a nap. And if you're at that point, you're probably too far behind where you probably need deep sleep to be better. But you probably don't have that. Mm-hmm. So it's like you're kind of in this like limbo stage. But that 20 minutes of that first couple stages can be enough to get you by. However, if you reach that deep, the body's going to want to keep you there for the extended period of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's non-REM sleep stage 2 is actually what happens is your blood pressure decreases, right? Your heart rate decreases, your body temperature starts to go down. And then let me grab some water. Get a little tickle in my throat.
All this sleep talk has got the throat
making
parched.
me sleepy.
Yeah.
So you actually see a lot more activity in non-REM2, I believe. But that's for memory editing and consolidation. So you can take a quick nap. Like let's say you want to learn something. You know the whole saying, you just take a nap on your textbook.
Yeah.
There's some truth to that.
I've tried it and it didn't it didn't work.
So what you got to do?
I think I was just reaching REM sleep. You know what I mean? Like it was always hard for me to just do 20 minutes. Yeah, I think
so it has to be 20-minute max, but
yeah.
Let's say you read something that you're having trouble remembering, like memorizing. If you take a nap after doing that, it will consolidate that.
And is that up to R2, like REM2?
Yeah, just to R2.
Okay.
You don't want to go into so non-REM2.
Okay, no. Okay.
You don't want to get to the deep sleep because REM, rapid eye movement, happens after deep sleep.
Okay, and that's the 30-40 minute zone where you're in there now?
Yeah,
okay.
So I think each sleep cycle is about 90 minutes to 110 minutes. So you've got non-REM1, that is a few minutes in length. Then non-REM2, that is up to 20 minutes. And then from that 20-minute mark to I think the deep sleep is the longest, and then REM sleep should be around 15% of the total cycle.
So isn't that interesting that that's where like the deepest portion of sleep is where you spend the least amount of time, basically, out of that.
Well, you do, I think.
For that cycle.
Okay, don't quote me on that. I don't know exactly how long, but let's say it's a 90-minute cycle, right? You tend to spend more time in the deep sleep than any other cycle. But cumulatively, right, non-REM 1, non-REM 2 is a total of 20 minutes, roughly.
Yeah.
Right? And then the REM is you want to be at least 15% of the other, I think more than 15%, 15 to 20, 25. I think it depends on what your body actually needs.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. In the deep sleep cycle, that's where the tissue is repaired.
That's why I was saying it's interesting that it's 15% where, so like think about how much stages you have to get to, like, or phases you have to get through just to get to the most beneficial portion, and to think about you want to stay in that period for the longest time, and in reality how much must be missing from everyday people, you know?
Yeah. Well, the worst is if you get woken up prior to REM sleep, because what's interesting about REM is that they've done research and they can see that the brain is actually getting washed during REM sleep.
Washed?
Yeah, like
What do you
there's
mean
these
by
beta amyloid plaques that develop in your brain due to like neurotoxins and a bunch of other reasons. Like if you have diabetes, and that leads to Alzheimer's and dementia.
The washing or the non-washing?
The non-washing. If you don't get enough
not reaching
REM,
to the, oh wow.
if you don't get enough REM, there's
links
there's a link to cognitive impairment as you age.
Interesting. Well, I think it's in like layman's term, it's good to, you usually see people that are in a job that they enjoy, which helps promote more like positive hormones, which then leads to better quality of sleep, and then usually better quality of living. You know what I mean?
So you're talking about like a job that doesn't cause anxiety, doesn't cause worry.
Yeah.
It's not a toxic environment. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yes.
But then it goes hand in hand because now you're getting better sleep, so you're gonna have less of that stuff.
Yes. So where your breaking points are. So if you are in a job that is more stressful, or let's say you're in a different stage in your career where you're not doing the things that you say want to do, maybe go to the other side of the spectrum and look at how maybe getting better sleep can then influence that.
100.
At least getting you through that period when you are shifting and doing the things that you really love, because that should be the main thing, is doing and finding something that you love to do.
Chicken or the egg, brother. Yeah, chicken or the egg.
But it is interesting because we can really take that into a whole other thing. And shout out to people doing research.
I have a little tangent.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have one client who's an executive of a big food company, and he was a shareholder, and they eventually sold to a private equity firm. And he came to me during this process, and they were about 3 to 4 years in to the acquisition, right? To the sale of this company. And he had gone through some other business stresses, like during COVID, where they almost actually shut down their whole operation. They had to buy a business in the States. So he, interestingly, had some like neck and upper back pain that he's been dealing with. And it got to a point where it was just horrible. He couldn't manage it. And he thought, what do? I need to get rid of this, or I'm going to have to actually retire.
Right.
and he's a true entrepreneur, go-getter. He wants to continue to work like for the next 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
So we definitely worked on sleep. Like that was a big part of it.
Right.
And I worked with him for a whole year. And the other day he said to me, he's like, since working with you, now I didn't do anything crazy. Like it was literally just some coaching.
Yeah.
Things that we talk about on this podcast, right?
Was there any manipulation in there, or like?
Yeah, I did some hands-on because
Yeah.
there's novelty there, and there are things that actually help. Like you can employ many different ways to trick the brain into feeling more comfort. That's basically what it is. It's not about like, oh, there's scar tissue and this joint's not moving. That's a small percentage of the population that actually goes for treatment. Now, what he said was, I feel now like rejuvenated. I know I won't need to retire, and I feel motivated. So
It's
it
life restoring,
completely, it completely shifted. So that's exactly what you said. Like, do you need to change jobs? Do you need to retire? Maybe just look at some of these key factors, right?
Which is why we're going in depth with it today.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's basically the sleep cycle, and you should go through multiple sleep cycles in one restful night.
Yeah. So I even more so feel for people with children, because I know that it's damn near impossible, if not, I don't want to say anything definite, but especially through the infancy stages before 1, you're basically getting REMs interrupted every point, because when that baby is crying, even if you're offsetting with your wife or your partner, it's going to be challenging in those first couple of months. So shout outs to all of the fathers and mothers out there. Yeah.
When I want to go back quickly to the memory consolidation piece. I was watching this documentary on Netflix a few years ago called Babies, and they were looking at the developmental milestones of babies and how amazing like nature is and how things happen. And they did this study where they took these toddlers, they gave them a new toy, they taught them how to play with the toy. Then half of them, they gave them their nap, half of them, they kept them up. Then a couple hours later, they brought them back into the same room, gave them the toy. The ones that napped remembered how to play with the toy. The ones that did not nap couldn't remember how to play with it.
Interesting. And this is like, I'm guessing like a couple months old. Or
No,
like,
these were, I think they were kind of like, I think they were like 8 months to a year. 8 months.
My scope with
I think it was like 8 to 9 months, something like that.
I could look at a baby right now and not have no idea months and everything. I'd be like, that's a baby. I know he can't walk. That's about it. My guesstimates are not there.
You'll experience it eventually.
Yeah.
God willing, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think we should touch on some of the negative impacts that poor sleep or being off your circadian rhythm can have. Like what can develop from that?
Yeah, let's get into it.
I have a list of these things, right? So for one, pretty obvious, we just talked about this, impaired cognitive function.
Right.
So your brain's not going to work to the capacity that you would like it to, or to its optimal capacity. That's a huge one. Mood disturbances.
Yeah. Oh, we all know of the person. You don't talk to me before my conference. All right, Steve. We
Mood
get
swings,
it.
all that, right? Weakened immune system.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yeah, that right? Especially now with like the we're in
all the viruses.
cold flu season. There's new variants of this flu since COVID. Like we got to do everything we can to boost our immune system now more than ever.
metabolic disruptions. This is an important one. This is because, a lot of the people tuning in to this podcast probably potentially have difficulties with their metabolism, right? So there's some interesting research around this.
And why you should be listening up if you're looking to lose 15 pounds. One of the best things that you can do along with strength training is looking at how you can increase your metabolism, because that's the work that you do when you're asleep.
Emerging hormone evidence. I don't know how new this is, but I know when they look at satiety hormones and hunger hormones, there's a significant change when you're lacking sleep. So in a study, they took people and they brought them down to 6 hours, 5 hours, 4 hours. Okay. I guess it's relative to how many hours they typically slept.
Right.
I don't know the exact process of how they did that. But so there's leptin and ghrelin. Okay. Leptin is a satiation hormone. So it's the hormone that tells you, I'm satisfied, I'm full, we're good to go, I don't have to eat right now.
Right.
Then there's ghrelin. Ghrelin is that hunger hormone. It's like, your body, you haven't eaten for a while, we need some nutrients, we need some energy. So it's that hunger, provides you with hunger.
Tells you that it's time to eat.
Exactly. So it's interesting because leptin, okay, which is the satiating hormone, that actually went down by 18%.
Oh, wow.
Okay? So
with increased sleep.
With decreased sleep. So the feeling of satisfaction and fullness would obviously decrease, right?
Okay, because
that hormone's not around,
right,
or in the same abundance. Then ghrelin, that increased, so their hunger hormones increased by something like 20%. Wow. What's the number here? By 28%. So overall, hunger hormones.
That's insane.
Yeah, and then all the hunger hormones, because there are other ones, went up by 26% on average.
Wow. So combining those two together, that's very significant.
Very significant for you wanting to overeat, right?
And putting you in a position to where you're probably gonna indulge. Yeah.
I said something like, on average, underslept individuals increase their calorie intake by like around 300 calories a day.
And we know that the general deficit for most people is anywhere from like 300 to 500 calories. So if you're in a position where you're adding another 300, we know how easy it is to get calories in, so most people are not looking at those things. If you're in an extra 300, you're probably, along with other factors and poor eating habits, you're probably going to lead yourself to probably eating more and more, a little bit more every time.
And there were other findings as well, lots of other findings. So we know that your metabolism is impacted negatively by undersleeping.
Right.
Cardiovascular issues, elevated blood pressure, right? Increased risk of heart attack. All of these are seen in the data, right? The data shows that. So that's also something that we should think about. Like, if you have, genetic predisposition, family history of cardiovascular disease, then there's another thing you should work on, right?
And I think there's some overlapping, because I think we mentioned the same thing with training. You know what I mean? Lack of training can lead to heart disease and these sort of things. You find that the habits think your training is out of whack, your sleep is now pushed out, or your activity is at an all-time low. Your hormones are imbalanced, so you have an influx of things that should be giving a certain stimulus and response that are no longer giving them as a result of a lack of sleep or lack of nutrients in your diet. And now you are in a position where you no longer have the motivation to train, to do these things, to put you in a better position. So we talk about bringing it back to those big rocks, right? Taking one thing at a time. This is why we don't advise for people to just be, go gung-ho and trying to accomplish everything, being Super Saiyan. Take it one thing at a time. If you only have time to work on sleep, we are showing you right now that
just be Goku.
Yeah, or be Goku, and and go Super Saiyan and see how that goes, But yeah, start with one, and improve from there.
Okay, so this is an exciting one to talk about. Okay, decreased libido.
Yeah,
that's
because
not something that you want in a relationship.
No.
Okay.
No.
No. Okay.
I'm just picturing somebody who's like, actually, I love having low libido. It's got more time to do work. And, yeah.
So here's the thing. When they took these women and they gave them more sleep, so an hour extra.
Guys, are you listening?
This was for women. Okay. Their libido went up by 14%.
Guys, are you listening?
For every hour of sleep that they got.
Hey, man. Guys, you better be paying attention. I'm taking mental notes as we speak, okay?
Yeah, so it's basically that sleep is essential, just like we talk about other things. Mm-hmm. But it just seems to me like sleep is the most essential. Mm-hmm. Think about this, right? Let's compare it to other things, right?
Right.
Are you going to survive if you don't strength train? Just survive.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
You're going to survive.
Are you going to survive if you don't eat for a day?
Yes.
Are you going to survive if you don't drink water for a day?
I think you can go up to 48 hours without, or...
I think it's days, right? It's days. Is what I'm getting at. Yeah. And one day, you can go one day without these things, and there's not much change in your ability to thrive.
Yeah.
Okay? You can't go 24 hours without sleep and not have significant changes to health markers.
Yeah.
So that tells you right away that that's probably the most essential thing to do.
Yeah.
So if you're
the
trying
argument
to
is definitely there.
Right. If you're trying to make gains.
Yeah.
Right. You're trying to improve your health. You're trying to get rid of pain. You're trying to
increase the quality of your
life. You want to have better mood and you want to be more, deal with your emotions better. I think sleep is the one thing that you should be focusing on.
And I think it's important to note that all of these things performing at a high level blend into what we looked at in those. I can't remember if it was the first episode or second one of holistic health and wellness, right? So having all of those pillars at a certain extent and being full is where we want to be. But we can look at how much of a change comes from not having one of those to see just how big of an impact it is. And then that can inform us on where we should maybe put our priorities based off of what we see taking place in our day-to-day. So, for example, if you aren't as productive, if you are noticing things with your cognition in terms of memory, recounting, and things like that, and you have all those other pillars, like I eat well, I am working out, I am active, I watch what I eat, then maybe looking at one of the things that we might neglect a lot and we're used to especially in the hustle culture mentality, dwindling off on first, we should maybe look to maintaining and then maybe taking some other time elsewhere.
I'm going to list off 10 daily behaviors that impact sleep negatively. Okay, so we'll talk about these 10, and we'll talk about, provide some pro tips on how to manage these behaviors. Maybe we still want to do some of these things without it impacting our sleep. So how do we do that, right? Some would call it a hack, right? I would just call it a tip. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys some tips. Okay, so irregular sleep schedule, irregular sleep schedule.
Right.
So we already talked about that. If you're sleeping at the different times throughout the week, that's going to impact your ability to maintain a consistent circadian rhythm. So have your circadian rhythms aligned, right?
And we know for some people who are on call, who work different jobs, that might not be as obtainable. But we are just speaking in general terms as to what are things that we can look to that negatively impact sleep.
Exactly.
So we'll have some tips for you as well.
So this tip that I have, and this is what I did, I figured out the time that I need to wake up in the morning based on the earliest time out of the week. So an example would be, let's say your child has a swim class in the morning at 7:30. So that means you got to wake up, taking into account how long it takes to get ready, etc. Let's say you got to wake up at 6, and that's only one day a week. So that means you got to wake up at 6 every day of the week. So you start there, and then you count backwards 9 to 9.5 hours. And that's really when you should be aiming to be in bed.
Yeah. Because you know it's going to take an additional set of time, especially if you have a spouse, maybe talking about the day, maybe, you know what I mean? Or just discussing reading. Maybe you want to catch up on another skill, or maybe you want to watch a show. You want to give enough time to maybe get that in for your own self, for your own mood, but then maybe still have that 30 minutes of buffer time where you're not looking at screens before bed.
That takes us to another point, but
yeah, I know because we're gonna talk about blue light, but I'm just
okay. So before that, so in keeping with this first behavioral change, set a bedtime alarm. Okay,
groundbreaking stuff, guys.
Bedtime alarm.
Okay? There you go. Podcast episode 9. Good job.
We're not talking about wake up alarm.
Yeah.
Okay, bedtime alarm.
Okay.
Yeah. That way, actually set an alarm. Maybe however long it takes you to get ready for bed, set it at that time. So you know that 9.5 hours is here. So in keeping with this, let's say it's 6. Okay, so from
6.
So that would be so from 12 to 6. That's 6 hours, right? So
12, 11, 10.
Yeah, so 9.
9:30.
So we're looking at 9:30.
Yeah,
let's call it. Okay. Set an alarm for 8:30. Right, so that okay, I'm gonna have to start getting ready for bed.
And I think a lot of smartphones nowadays have these features, and we all ignore them. Utilize your phone to help you to get off your phone. You know what I mean? So set those reminders. They can be great tools to, because we all need them. We all get caught up in conversation. Exactly. We all get, it's no one's fault, but we put these things in place to help us stay on track.
Right. Screen time.
Yes. Okay. Huge nowadays.
Because of the blue light. Okay. So let's say you don't have any way to block the blue light, because there are some devices you could use. You could put a screen over your screen that blocks the blue light. You can wear glasses that block blue light as well. Let's say you don't want to do that, then I would aim for 2 hours.
2 hours before bed.
Yeah. So you set the alarm. So let's say it's 9:30 that you plan. Then that means by 7:30, there's no more screens.
I think that one might be a little bit more challenging for like students, or peoples who take work home with them. But then go back to our initial conversation about work-life balance and look at what you would have to do and what you would have to shift around if you are an entrepreneur, changing your schedule, or working in a certain position and thinking, okay, how long am I going to have to stay in this position working like this before I can change these things? And as long as you have that insight to know, okay, I'm going to diminish this at some point, and that's your goal, that's better than, well, accepting that this is how I'm going to live my life.
Exactly. Quick break.
Yeah.
There's a mode on your device where it just turns on automatically and it takes the blue light off.
Most phones have this right now, but I think there is an advantage to putting the screen away. Apart from, Andre made a great point, unless you're like iPad, you're reading something to kind of wind down. It all comes back down to that sleep hygiene and looking at the things that are going to put you in the right mindset to go to sleep.
Right.
And sometimes being on the phone can be an upper.
For sure. Caffeine and stimulants.
Speaking of upper.
Yes. Caffeine, what it basically does is binds to a receptor in your brain. It's an adenosine receptor, so this neurotransmitter. It binds to that and it prevents adenosine to bind to the receptor. So it's blocking adenosine from binding. And this is what creates the sleep drive. So adenosine builds up in your brain.
Right.
As you basically go through your day and the metabolic processes that happen in your body. So you have this molecule that builds up, and then as that builds up more and more, think of it as like a pressure cooker. The pressure is building. If you were to nap, right, that is like a pressure valve release, and it takes out your tiredness and brings down your sleep drive. So caffeine does this. It kind of puts a mute on the adenosine. And then what that does, once the caffeine is metabolized, like it's taken out of your blood, then you have all this extra adenosine built up.
And you hit you.
And you crash.
Yeah. Hits you even harder. Because it's not stopping the production of the adenosine. It's dulling the sense that you are recognizing.
Right. So it's important to know that the half-life of caffeine is like, I think it's like 5 to 6 hours.
So I think you mentioned that it should be like 8 to 12 hours should be prior to your sleep.
Yes.
Should be the window you're looking at before so if you're thinking about someone that's awake, working back 8 to 12 hours before that time that we just established for your sleep, if you're waking up at 6 a.m., should be the time frame that you're looking to
cut it off. Exactly.
Which roughly ends up being around mid-afternoon-ish, if we were going off of the time scale that we talked about. And if you are a nighttime guy, you can always flip that on its head. So whenever your sleep schedule would be.
Exactly. Alcohol consumption. You know, it was once thought of as a nightcap, right?
Nice way to end the day. A little bourbon, a little scotch.
Yeah. You know what it does? It actually increases your drowsiness, right? It makes you, it's like a sedative, basically. But it really impacts your REM sleep.
The quality of and we through this episode, I hope you, at least by now, if you're still listening and here with us, you would know how daunting that is.
So if you like to, excuse me.
Damn, they're coming for you today.
It's all this talking.
I know.
Okay.
Need some tea after.
If you enjoy alcohol, enjoy it infrequently. I'm sorry to say it, but I have so many clients that I tell, like, listen, alcohol is not doing you any good.
Yeah.
But I understand.
There aren't a lot of benefits apart from the habitual nature and the socio tie-in that we have with alcohol and going out.
Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. I point blank asked one of my clients, I was like, why do you drink? Like, why do you have 3 glasses of wine every day?
Wow.
She's like, it's lifestyle. It's just the lifestyle. Like, what do you mean? Well, just hold it in my hand. It's just the lifestyle.
I want to do an episode on alcoholism alone, because it is.
That's a heavy one.
Yeah.
Because
there is no net positive from it. Like, any way you squeeze it or look at it, you know what I mean? Do I think it has a place in certain environments? Yes, but that's very individually based, and even then, you can't dispute the data on it.
Save it for social events that happen infrequently.
Yeah.
Heavy meals late at night. This is number 5.
Terrible.
Yeah, that actually can really impact your REM sleep as well. A lot of these things impact your deep sleep and your REM sleep, but it's usually REM.
Which we know how.
I know when I eat a big meal, especially a high fat content meal, like late at night.
Because
Sometimes
fat's slower to digest as well.
Exactly. What happens? Your body now has to try to digest the food.
Gear. Yeah.
So what happens in the middle of your sleep? So let's say you're sleeping for 8 hours. At the 4-hour mark, your heart rate should drop to its lowest point, right? And usually when you have a late meal, you see that heart rate not dropping until 3/4 into your sleep.
Wow.
Right? So that's really the issue. So try to eat a meal 3 to 4 hours prior to bed.
And remember that you still have that 30-minute window of where you're winding down. So when your head hits the pillow is not when sleep begins, realistically. No.
Number 6, lack of physical activity.
Yeah.
So you have to fill that tired tank, right?
If you are having trouble and you find yourself restless and you are someone that lives a majority sedentary lifestyle, one of the things that you can do to improve your sleep hygiene and also just quality of sleep is being more active throughout the day.
Simple as that. I don't think we have to go into any more detail.
Yeah.
We could talk about the whole adenosine thing again, but at the end of the day, you just have to make sure you get enough steps in, right? If you're sitting at a desk, doing a job that's not really stimulating cognitively, find something that's cognitively stimulating, mentally stimulating, because you have to also fatigue your brain.
Challenging is your word to take home. Whether if you're not being challenged at work, find things that challenge you mentally or physically. I think if you're feeling that, then you're going to find yourself ready to go back to sleep because you feel like you've actually been taking all the energy and putting it towards something.
So this is not so much a behavior, this one, but it's a state. Being in a state of arousal.
Mm-hmm. So you going back to libido?
Not that state.
I got you.
But excessive, mental arousal. So it could be stress, emotional arousal, right? For instance, if you turn on the news before bed and you see what's happening around the world, the conflicts that are occurring, seeing dead babies and on your feed.
You don't know what you're going to scroll and see sometimes. And sometimes
stay away from that.
That you didn't want to see right before bed.
Exactly. Yeah. Even movies and shows that are dramatic, and some of these shows are really good. Like, these actors are good.
Yeah.
Right?
They'll have you believe in what's on screen.
So what do you do aside from avoiding that stuff? Right?
Pick certain types of content to consume before, vetted content that you know is going to put you in a state relaxation. You
could also do breathing exercises.
Yeah.
Bring down your state of arousal, right? The optimal zone of functioning, Okay. Sometimes for an athlete, maybe your arousal has to be higher during competition. But nobody wants to have a high state of arousal right before bed, because that's going to affect your sleep.
Right. So the keys there is like there's going to be states where you're going to be wanting to be up for it, so to speak, and then there's also going to be states, particularly in thought of sleep, where you're going to want to bring that back down.
Exactly. Inadequate or poor sleep environment.
Oh, yeah. If you come from a family that is up late, which like
Noises.
I've seen, like I got more appreciation for the environment that I sleep in after seeing how some people were sleeping, or just how they would tell me, you know?
Well, you should actually be in a blackout room.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to be in a blackout room. There are some hacks that you can use, like you can purchase mattresses that actually change the temperature of the surface you sleep on. The temperature of the room should be 18 degrees. Right? That's cool for a lot of people, but that will actually be better for you.
Right. Because you'll probably get more snuggled. You'll probably like look for that blanket a little bit more.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
And the last two, napping. Napping may not be the best thing for you. Most professionals actually don't recommend napping. Now, if you had poor sleep or you're trying to catch up, or like we said earlier, nap earlier in the day.
We kind of broke down, if you are going to implement napping as a strategy to get back sleep, how to do so. So you can kind of rewind to that. But like Adam is saying, if you find yourself napping repetitively when the sun is up and you are someone who has a regular 9 to 5, and this is moving well into the mid-afternoon, evening time, that is an indication that your sleep is poor, and you probably should be looking at ways to improve that.
And the last one is don't ignore sleep disorders. Right? Sometimes you have an issue that has to be treated medically or clinically. Maybe you need actually a sleep test, sleep assessment done. So things like sleep apnea, insomnia, you might just have to seek professional help.
Yeah.
So don't ignore that, because a lot of people will just ignore it and they just go through life.
Yeah. And
so those are the 10.
Yeah.
And I hope we gave you some good tips there.
Yeah. If you feel and enjoyed this episode, be sure to let us know down in the comments below. We are going to continue to give you this information. So your feedback is very well valued. Okay? And we thank you for traveling beyond reps and sets.